we go. Going to hide some of these windows that are open on my screen. All right. Open up Twitch. You should already have Twitch open, right? Does it show a question mark?
I have it open, but there's no feed yet. But there's that delay.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try to crank up the volume here a little bit. See if this comes back. All right, it says we're live for about a minute. I don't know why it's still not picking up on the feed yet.
Seeing it.
Oh, the chat popped open for me.
Today. 19 seconds. Oh, there we go. Sweet. Oh,
this is the Little Flower Soap Company, a small business on Amazon. I'm Holly.
I'm Justin.
Oh, sweet. Someone replied that we are live. Hey, look at that. The system works. All right. Anthony, are you ready to talk about HTML tags, specifically link tags, maybe some image tags?
Let's get past this ad. All right. I'm good.
All right. Okay, so welcome to week 3, everybody. The good news is this week has fewer chapters, fewer topics, but that doesn't mean that there's any less work this week. In fact, there's a couple special projects this week that we can't wait to see what you create. In fact, let's start out by talking about the weekly work. Let me pull up my computer screen here. Look at that. Our floating heads are in the bottom right here, Anthony. So this week, the assignments cover how to create hyperlinks between web documents in Chapter 6. We're going to have a lecture that covers a lot of examples of how to link between pages, and I think that will be very helpful. Chapter 7 shares a lot of the same concepts from Chapter 6. If you can create links between pages, then you can probably also include images on your web page. So we're not going to talk a lot about Chapter 7, but if you have questions, I would encourage you to write them in the chat room so that we can make sure to address them before we end tonight. So those are the exercises that are coming out of the book, but we have some assignments that we've designed that are going to help you practice, because the only way to get better at coding is to practice. Remember that you have Atom available. I talked to, I think, 3 or 4 students just in the last couple days about getting Atom installed and the value of it. And I think I know a lot of people are practicing with its ability to autocomplete. Have you been playing around with Atom, Anthony?
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to use... Oh,
very
sorry.
fond of Atom. Sorry.
I love it too. And I think the students who have been trying it are enjoying how much time it can save. I did have someone say that they wanted to use Notepad still, so we'll see if that lasts. So the assignments that you're going to be working on that are not out of the book include a photo gallery, where you will download images from the web and create like 5 or 6 web pages. I think it's 6 web pages that show off some small versions of your images, and then you click on the image to show the full version. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the live stream. You're also going to be building a resume. We had some good questions in the Slack chat room asking if it had to be a real resume or if it could be a fake resume. I think someone wanted to make one for Harry Potter. Maybe it was Albus Dumbledore, but one of our favorite fictitious characters. And do you have a preference, Anthony? What do you think? Should people make their own resume?
Yeah, I think that would benefit everybody.
Because if you don't have a resume, there's no better time than now to create one. And if you do have a resume, then it should be a lot easier for you to focus on building the HTML part of the assignment. So I think it's worth it. The resume does have quite a few requirements. We gave you a prescribed list of tags that we want you to use. In fact, if I count them up here, it even says that there are 13 required tags that you're going to have to use in your document. Those are the required tags. They include HTML, head, title, meta. All those you get for free as soon as you use Atom and you start typing HTML and you hit tab. So some of those are going to be extremely easy for you to include. There are going to be some that you have to add, and you have to brainstorm how you're going to use them. And there's going to be an opportunity to do that during tonight's live stream too, from paragraphs to headings to lists to anchor tags, divs. I had a really good question about divs in the Slack earlier today. And then finally, after you get those 13 required tags in your project, you have to pick 5 from a grab bag, I'm calling it, of HTML tags. Are any of these ones that you enjoy? I'm seeing block quote, code, ABBR, strong. Do you have any strong feelings about these tags, Anthony?
Well, you mentioned strong feelings. I do like the strong tag. That's a good one.
We'll brainstorm some ways to use these, but you have to pick 5, and there's quite a few that you can choose from.
That's a pretty big list.
Then there are 5 special characters, which are also known as escaped characters or entities in the HTML world. The reason that I like to include these is there are certain characters that you can't find on a keyboard or that are a challenge to include on a web page. Let's pretend you're teaching math. One of the things that you might write as a math instructor, or if you're taking a math class, might be the less than sign. But we're already using the less than sign in a tag, right, Anthony?
Yeah, that's really tricky if you want to use that less than sign.
Yeah, so there's certain characters that are reserved that you either can't type because it might look like a tag or they're not readily accessible. So our textbook has a table. I think you can read about this. It looks like on page 105 to 108. I listed some examples of these special characters. There are plenty of more, trust me. But if you pick one of these 5 of these characters, I think you can integrate into your resume pretty easily, particularly the dashes or the vertical bars or copyright or some of the quotation marks. So those are a good opportunity for practice. And then finally, one of the requirements is that the tags that you use need to use at least one example of an attribute. And I kind of give you a hint here when I'm making a link to the Mid-Michigan College website. You might actually want to link to the Mid-Michigan College website. So if you do that, why not take the opportunity to make that be a link that works? And that, I think, is a perfect segue to the main topic tonight, which is how to create link tags, because they're the best way for you to add an attribute. All right, so if you're ready, Anthony, I'm going to go to the presentation. At least that should be pulled up.
I am. I just wanted to tell one of the viewers who asked a question that we will answer that question a little closer to the end. A question about homework.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely get back to that. Thanks for finding that.
And yes, it would in terms of a mail to link. There's a question about can we use mail to
Absolutely
as a link.
I hope we'll get to that in our examples too. So if you hold on to the mail to idea, hopefully you can volunteer that when we're brainstorming what to put on a resume.
Yeah, that's going to be good.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Chapter 6, which is all about links. I've got some examples that I want to show on the screen here. The first thing that I want to show you is the basic structure. I hope this isn't too shocking. This is what link tags, tags look like in HTML. There's always usually an opening and a closing, and I think there was actually someone who contributed the anchor tag to our little database activity last week. The anchor tag is one of my favorites, although I have to say it's one of the most oddly named one. I don't think of anchors when I think about links very, very much. And you know what confuses things even more, Anthony? There is a link tag. Did you know that?
We talked about it last week as an error.
Well, I think, yeah, you're right. It was in our error list. I don't know if it was a tag or if it was an attribute potentially.
It was an attribute to the anchor tag, but we did have link in there.
Yeah, if you join us in a couple weeks, we'll talk about the link tag when we start talking about style sheets. For whatever reason, the W3C decided that the easiest way to link hypertext pages together would be to define which part of the page, and specifically not what part of the page, but what text was going to be the link to take you to another web page. I think that's where they came up with the word anchor. Because what the most important part of a link really is what goes in the middle. You have to decide what you want the text to be that people are going to click on. I think everyone knows what a link looks like by default. If you use the anchor tag without any other adjustments, what does a link look like, Anthony?
Without any adjustments, it's always blue with underlined text.
Yeah, people have been trained from like the age of like 0 when they start playing around with phones. People know what those blue things are. They know to tap them. So you have to choose the text that you want to be clickable. Usually, if you, let's say you're linking to an article or a blog post, you've probably seen people take the title of that website and they'll turn it into the clickable version. That's what we try to do on the mid website. We try not to list the URL and make it clickable. We'd way rather make the description be the text in between the two A tags, so that what appears blue and with the underline is the text that would be normally read aloud. You know what's pretty bad to put inside of anchor tags, Anthony?
There's probably a lot of really bad things I could think of, but
Well, this used to just be a pet peeve of mine, but it turns out it's actually an accessibility guideline or best practice. You should not put "click here" in your as your clickable text, because people don't know what they're going to click on. If a screen reader, if someone was using a screen reader, it would actually be possible for them to get a list of all the links that are going to be read aloud. And if it read 12 different links that all said "click here," I don't think someone would know where they're going to go. So don't put "click here" in your links, in your anchor tags. Put the name of what you want to link to. So I said that was probably the most important thing, but if you simply put A tags around some text, you're going to be disappointed because nothing works. You're not telling the browser how to go anywhere. So there is one other piece of information that you absolutely need on every anchor tag that you create, and it's that href attribute that you see on the screen here. I am trying to rack my mind to remember what href stands for. I want to say it's something to do with like the hyperlink reference or the HTTP reference. This
hypertext reference.
Hypertext reference. There you go. This goes all the way back to the first week when we talked about URLs. One of the main things that they envisioned when you were building websites would be to link them together from one website to another external website. You can put any URL inside of the href attribute. So if you wanted to link to google.com, you could put https://google.com. It would not work if you forgot the protocol part, the HTTPS. So when we practiced that URL dissection activity, part of that was getting you thinking about URLs, because if you want to link to any web page, you're going to have to understand that you need the full part of the URL. Otherwise, your links aren't going to work. In fact, I think that's a good segue to our next topic, which is the difference between absolute and relative links that you're creating. In order for you to link to an external website, you need to make an absolute link, including the protocol. Because if you don't put the protocol in the front, the browser is going to assume that you're actually trying to navigate to a web page that's on the same web server, the same domain name, the same subdomain, the same fully qualified domain name that you're visiting in the first place. So if that's midmich.edu and you have a link that goes to folder/page1.html, it's going to request from the server a file named that. If you had typed just google.com, let me do that. Let me get rid of the HTTPS. If we had a link on the mid website to go to google.com and we hadn't copied that full URL, the server would be asked by your browser when you click on the link for a file named google.com. Do we have such a file, Anthony?
We don't.
No, but maybe we should make one. We probably could make one. I don't know what the .com would open up with. Maybe like a DOS program on Windows or something weird.
It's something weird for sure.
So the protocol is important when you're making links that are absolute. A lot of the exercises that you're going to be doing in Chapter 6, though, are going to focus on practicing making links between files that are in a folder or in several folders that you yourself control, because that's probably the trickiest part of creating links. At least that's been my experience. What do you think, Anthony?
It is tricky. And an analogy for absolute versus relative, if you think about your house, if you lived at 123 Party Avenue and you wanted to send a letter to your next door neighbor at 125 Party Avenue, you could do one of two things. You could tell the mail carrier to take this letter next door, which is relative to where you are right now. Or you could use an absolute and say, take this to 125 Party Avenue. They'll get you to the same place, but it's two different ways of doing it. And one of them is dependent on where you are currently. The other one is not.
Yeah. There's a lot of nuances to making relative paths and links between pages, so we're going to dive a bit deeper into that. There is one more feature that I want to show off related to URLs that we didn't really talk about in the first week because I don't think it came up in any of the ones that were submitted, but there is a way to add a pound sign at the end of a URL and then include a name of something that's on the page. And this will actually jump down in the browser. It will actually scroll you down on the web page that you're going to the section that has been labeled with that name. So I have the complete working example on here. The textbook calls these fragments. You identify a fragment by putting the ID attribute on something, and then whatever you decide to put in the ID attribute, in this case it's history, that becomes a name that you can reference with the hash symbol or the pound sign in your URLs or in your hrefs, and then you can make a link that's clickable to jump up and down the page. This works when you're on the same page. Like if I clicked on this link here, I would actually jump back up in the page to history of the web. But it works in a couple different ways too. If you ever tried to share a link to something like Stack Overflow, or maybe you're in a forum and you want to link to a post, or if you're on Wikipedia and you want to link to a section on Wikipedia, the URL that you might get by right-clicking and copying the URL from the link that you were looking at is likely going to include a fragment like that. So I wanted to show an example of one of these on the mid website real quick. If you are visiting our website on a mobile device, you might have scrolled very far down on the website and you might want to get back up to the top. So one of the things that we've added on the mobile design is a link that says back to the top. And if you hover over that in Chrome, you'll actually see that the URL that you're going to is the current page with a little pound symbol that says pound top. So if I click that, it jumps me all the way back up to the very top of the page where we actually put an ID on something that's at the top called top. So you jump back up there. And that's on every one of our web pages right now. So that's one way that we use those fragments. I do see them used a lot on social media sites. I also see it on Wikipedia because they have headings that they will try to make be clickable and linkable. Is there a question?
So, yeah, there is. It's about using IDs more than once on a page. And an example of where this is often used is if you have a very long page, oftentimes people will put an ID for the top at the top of the page so that they can put various points to link back to the top throughout the document. If you had two places in your document that you called top, then the link wouldn't know where to go. So you are restricted to a unique ID, and you can't use it again somewhere else on the page.
Right.
That'll cause confusion for the browser.
It will. And if you were to run the source code that you've written through a validator, that would be one of the things that it complains about as well. IDs, we're going to talk a lot more about them when we get into CSS. But you're right, IDs can only be used once on a page. But that's why they're great for creating links to a section on the page, because you know that it's only going to one place on that page that can exist. Great question. All right, so those were the main concepts I wanted to talk about with links. Let's put the pedal to the metal and actually practice some of these. There is this crazy diagram. I forget exactly what page it's on, but it's called Figure 6.4. Let me get our faces out of the way here, Anthony. Oop.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, all right, our faces are gone. So this diagram in all its glory here shows a hierarchy that can also be represented as a folder structure. In fact, when you download the zip file that I gave you in Moodle and you unzip it, that's a key part. You actually extract the compressed file. It will create a folder called Jen's Kitchen. And inside of it are going to be several files, a few at the top level, like about and index.html, but it's also going to create a folder called images and a folder called recipes. If you browse a bit deeper, open up recipes, you're going to find salmon, and a salmon file, another file, and then a pasta folder. And if you dig a bit deeper into pasta, you're going to find couscous, linguine. There are lots of folders, lots of files. Some of them are images, some of them are HTML pages. So across chapter 6 and chapter 7, you're going to be looking at folders like this and editing HTML files to either use images or link between things that are different in different parts of these folders. So that's what this diagram is useful for. And as you're doing the exercises, I would encourage you to flip back to this page, bookmark it, thumbnail it, or put your thumb in it and then flip back to it so that as you are trying to make a link from one file to another, you kind of either use your finger or you use a mouse cursor, if you have the online textbook, to pretend that you are in this file and try to trace your steps to get to the file that you need to access, whether that's another index or another HTML file or another image. Oh, and someone in the chat said it's page 116. Thank you. I need to put that on the slide someday. So we're going to come back to this diagram. But what I'd like us to do now is pretend that we are deep inside of the linguine folder or the pasta folder, looking at linguine.html.
I'm picturing it right now.
You're picturing it. Okay. All right. I'm getting hungry again. So if we're looking at linguine, let's pretend that we wanted to make a link back to the home page. We want to get to index.html, and we're going to try to do it relative. This is the hardest application of this linking technology that we've talked about. We want to jump from linguine all the way up to the front page, index.html. We have talked about folders already. We have the screenshot here so you can see the folders. I think a lot of you, when you were dissecting URLs, picked a URL that had folders in it. So I think a lot of you remember that the / character represents going into a folder. But what you probably have never done before is try to figure out how to get out of a folder and go up to its parent. How do you do that? Well, there's a special character that I want to introduce to you, a special set of characters. It's the ... and the /. Together, these powerful little characters instruct the computer to consider where you're at currently, where you're living, where you are relative to your current position. And the ... is short. That means go up a level. Go up to the folder above it with this ... And if we wanted to get from linguine, if we go up a level, do we see index.html? No, that's still the recipe folder. So we want to go ... once, ... twice. That gets us up to this level inside of the Jen's Kitchen folder. And then we can write the name of the file that we want to link to. So index.html. So that's possibly the most complicated link that you will have to make in chapter 6. And to prove the point that this is applicable to chapter 7, the image tag, even though it's only one tag, it doesn't open or close, it also requires an attribute, the source attribute, in order for you to tell it what image to put in its place. So you have to provide either a URL to the image, or you have to provide the path, which looks suspiciously like what we just did for the anchor tag. So the same concept applies. If we wanted to use the Jen's Kitchen logo, that's not in the folder that we're currently in. That's not in this pasta folder where linguine sits. So we had to use ... to get up into recipes, and then ... to get up into Jen's Kitchen. And then we had to, instead of just writing the name of the image, because that's not in the Jen's Kitchen folder, we have to go into the images folder and then pick Jen's Kitchen.gif. So this hypothetical example here allows us to make a link that is actually an image. So this is like what you see at the top of every web page, a little home link that would take you back to the front page using relative links. How'd I do, Anthony?
Pretty good. Is there a way that we could get to that image without using relative links? And if so, why would we not do that?
This was a question that I received through Slack as well today. There is a way for us to not use a relative link. The secret would be to to make it an absolute link would be to type in the full URL to your website. So like https://www.mimish.edu. That would be an example. Or you can actually replace a lot of these relative characters with just a single slash. That would get us all the way up to the top level folder. But there's a catch, and there's a reason why you're not going to be asked to do that in the exercises. You are not running a web server for these exercises. You are working in folders that are on your computer. And when you say something like this top level slash, that is going all the way up, likely to the top level folder on your computer. And I don't think that's where you have index.html living. So for the assignments and for your practice, walking up and down the folder structure, I think you're going to be using relative links primarily for the exercises. Did that go in the direction you were hoping, Anthony?
It did. I just want to add that it's a common it's a common error to have a link that starts with C:// // which is another absolute link to a file on your hard drive if you're using a Windows machine. And that can get confusing, and if you see anything referencing a drive letter, then you know that you should probably be using relative links instead.
Yeah, because you can't guarantee that the person who's going to actually look at your assignment to grade it, namely us, I don't think that we have the exact same folder structure on our computers as you do on yours. So yeah, we'd open up linguini.html, we'd be expecting a picture of pasta, and we'd see a big question mark. I'd be disappointed.
Yeah, if you're expecting pasta, you should get pasta. That's a rule.
Okay, so the rest of this slideshow is examples from the book. At this point, I want to open up to the chat room. Are there any particular exercises from Chapter 6 that have you scared or concerned? Because I would love to talk about them while we have Anthony on the line. He has a very calming effect on everyone, not just students.
Never heard that before. It's good to know.
Exercise 6.1 is the external link. I think that the author tries to be particularly tricky because they tell you that they have the example of the Food Network link already working. In the files that you download from Moodle, they actually left that out. So you're going to be following what's in the book in the picture here. If you want to make the Food Network link, that's cool. But when you try to do Epicurious, she told you that the way to get to the website is www.epicurious.com. That would totally work if you typed it into a browser. But if you just wrote the www directly, what do you think is going to happen, Anthony?
I think it's going to think it's some kind of file, and it's not going to go to the right place. It's going to think it's a relative link.
Yeah, I mean, I might have an Epicurious file on my computer, but I don't think many people.
If you have one, you're good.
So remember, full URLs for those external links. Otherwise, they won't work. When I was helping a student earlier today, we talked about how Adam could help with this. And the question came up, do I have to retype everything, all the source code? And you could for practice. But I am totally cool with you downloading what we've posted in Moodle as the starting files and editing those. I did notice that the formatting was off on some of those files, and so I replaced them today. So if you downloaded the files over the weekend or before today, I really recommend re-downloading those, because when you open them up in Atom, they're going to be a lot easier to work with. You'll be able to actually scroll down, find this one list item, put your cursor right where you want, and type A in Atom, and then hit Tab to autocomplete the link. And then all you'll have to do is make sure that the part that you want clickable is moved in. Let me give you an example. I have Atom over here, as it so happens, because this is like a cooking show again. Let me put it in HTML mode. I'll make up a little sample page here. So let's say we had an unordered list with 2 LIs. I think we were trying to go to Epicurious. And what was it, the Food Network?
Yeah.
So this is pretty much where you're at with the starting files. There's a lot more source code on the page, but when you scroll down to this section, you're going to be on this word Epicurious. You can put your cursor in front of the E and type A, and you're going to get this autocomplete menu where the first option is anchor. That's what you want. So you can hit tab or hit enter, and it inserts the tag, the complete tag that you need, and moves you to the href attribute super fast. So you'd probably paste in the URL. If I type in https www.epicurious, that is a hard word to spell, .com. If I just relied on Adam's autocomplete here, you'd see that I'd actually have the word Epicurious separate and not clickable, and there would actually be nothing on the screen that's clickable. So don't forget to move that text in between the two A tags for that to be the link that you're expecting to see. So I coded this up in, I think it was about 30 seconds here. I'm hopeful that opening up the starting file will save you time and you can focus on going right into where they tell you to go and adding the tag with Adam's autocomplete. Because the concept that we're trying to convey this week is creating links, and you don't have to memorize any other code, just know how to add links and how these tags are supposed to be arranged. So that's exercise 1. Did we get any other questions in the chat room about particular exercises?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, so let's go look at the tree here. Are there any... I'm not sure if you can see this on your screen, Anthony. I'm on slide 6. Are there any interesting paths on here that we could call out as another example?
You mean on exercise 2? 6.2?
Oh, I mean, we could do 6.2. I'm trying to figure out on the diagram here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Are there any other interesting examples that we could make up for them since they don't have specific questions?
Yeah. Let's see. If trying to think of there's not a folder in a. Oh, there yeah, okay. There's one. What about if we wanted to get from? I'm going to make this a little harder.
Go for it. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to move some stuff around on my screen here while you're talking.
We're in Salmon HTML, which is in the recipes folder.
Got it. Okay.
And I would like to make a link to the spoon GIF.
So you want to make it so someone can click on the word spoon if it appears on the page, and they're taken to a lovely animated GIF of a spoon potentially.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, so
it's tricky because we're going both directions.
We are. Okay, so we're starting. Let me make the. I'm gonna make up my hypothetical page here. I've got this open. This is now, the title is now Salmon. Yeah. So we're gonna add, what do you think, like a paragraph here, and in it we're going to say, check out this cool spoon. So let's go through the exercise here of thinking, what do we want to be the clickable link? So if I told you that the text in the paragraph was check out this cool spoon, what parts would you want clickable?
Spoon.
Spoon? Just the spoon, or do you think it's the cool spoon?
Cool spoon. Cool spoon.
Okay, all right.
Cool.
We have consensus. We're linking to the cool spoon. So I'm going to move my cursor to before cool and type A and use the beautiful autocomplete to get the anchor tag in here. So I'm going to move cool spoon in between those anchor tags. And I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to call it salmon.html, and I'll just put this in my downloaded files. Okay, I'm opening up Salmon. It's not a pretty page, but there is a link to Cool Spoon. So that it does look like that's the clickable part, but when I click it, nothing happens because I didn't fill this out correctly. All right, so let's go back to the diagram. I got a little lost here. You said that we were trying to go from Salmon all the way around to spoon.gif. I think people are trying to help us out in the chat room.
Yeah.
What are they telling us to do?
So we've got a suggestion that we use the .. to get to the parent of the current folder that we're in.
Okay. So that took us out of recipes.
We're in recipes, and then the .. / will take us to the root folder.
The Jen's
Now
Kitchen.
we've got to get to the folder that Spoon is in, which is called images.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to type in images here. Cool, cool, cool. And then what do we need next?
Well, once we get into that folder, we've got to actually have the file name.
Okay. Which
In this case,
is
spoon.gif.
yeah, and I put the slash in there too. So the slashes are going to separate folders from files in here. Dot dot slash got us up. Then we dove into the images folder. That's what the slash after images means. And then we're asking for spoon.gif. You know what the greatest travesty is here, Anthony? We did all this hard work, and when I go and I refresh my web page, we're kind of false advertising here. I don't have a spoon.gif.
Oh, well, I was basing it off of having this existing folder structure file.
Well, the good news is I agree. That is a cool spoon, and that's how the link would work. So thank you for the help in the chat room. I think that's a good example. Everything else is kind of a remix on that. They're having you maybe start from index and link deep down to linguini. That's a couple folders. Sometimes they might have you start in salmon and link down into like couscous. Yeah, that sounds good. I eat a salmon and couscous meal, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would.
And then sometimes in later chapters, you're going to be including images that are typically in like an images folder. That seems to be a general practice on a website where you might have a lot of images that you're going to use and you don't want them in the main folder, so you group them together inside a folder called images. In fact, that is how I recommend building your photo gallery, which if we don't have any questions, we might be able to move on to the next part of our live stream. Did we have anything else that you wanted to talk about in the chat room, Anthony?
Not yet.
Okay. Cool. Cool spoon. Let me check my list here. All right. We talked about the resume project. We talked about anchor tags quite a lot. Oh, it is time to talk about resume, Anthony. So let me pull up the resume assignment again. We talked about the required tags and the grab bag. But what I think we should spend a little bit of time doing is helping our students realize what they can put on a resume. I think we've convinced them to build their own. I think that's the best for everyone. Can we get them started? What do you think should be on a resume? And if you're in the chat room, please volunteer some things that you would expect to see on a resume. We're going to brainstorm the content, and then we'll figure out what type of tags we can use for that content.
Well, I think I want potential employers to see what I've done before.
So what you've done before. So are you thinking like the jobs that you may have had or the school you've taken?
An example from the chat room is perhaps I want to mention my education.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And you know what? If you are taking this class at Mid-Michigan College, I think that you would want to put that on your resume, that you are pursuing a degree. I think it would make sense for you to have a section all about education. What types of things do you think you'd put in the education? I'm curious.
Well, depending on the job, you could highlight your degree, or you could highlight some classes that you've had that are important for that particular job. If you want to be a web designer, you might want to mention this class.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'm delaying so that people in the chat room can share ideas, but these are the things that never come up. People are very eager to put their completed degrees or their completed high school, but they often neglect to actually share what they're currently doing and then explain what they're doing. Your time at Mid is more than just one line on your resume. I think that you can probably talk about what the most important projects that you worked on, or talk about it in terms of the classes that you've taken, because that might actually say something about what you're pursuing aspirationally for a career.
Maybe you're partway through a web certificate program.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so we got education. What else are they saying?
References might be a good thing to mention.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We've got work experience. Where have you worked before?
Yep.
We've got any kind of professional development that you'd like to highlight. Maybe you've been to a conference on a relevant topic to the job that you would like to get.
I'm going to group that with one of the other ones that they mentioned about certifications, because you might not have, both, but if there's something related to your area of interest that you have specific certifications or qualifications in, I think that's important to include.
Someone is suggesting maybe this isn't for all of us, but GPA might be something to mention if that's something you want to highlight. I have a tendency to leave that one off.
Well, I think I used to include it, but I have to admit, I don't know if GPA from a decade ago is really something that I should keep putting on my resume.
Yeah, that's why I'm taking it off, because it's old.
Yeah. Okay. I saw anticipated grad date. Oh, that is good.
Yeah. When are they going to be done? As an employer, people are going to want to know that.
Exactly.
Oh, a suggestion to use a block quote.
Oh,
we're jumping a little bit, but
we'll get there.
Just to put a placeholder in that.
Did you see that someone put like software? That one scrolled by me, and I also see contact info. Those are things I was waiting for. There's one thing that's not on the list.
Yeah, it's a pretty important one, I think.
Anthony and I joked about this before the live stream. Believe it or not, I was helping hire for a position moons ago, and I didn't have a name on the resume. I think the name should be on there. I'm going to put that separate from contact info. It's probably the most important thing. Imagine, you spend a lot of time building a resume and submitting it. What if something happens and your resume gets separated from the rest of your information that was submitted?
Yeah. That's not a good thing.
It's happened. I feel so bad. I have no idea whose amazing resume I was looking at.
You got contact information there. That's really good.
Yeah.
We did have someone ask a question about if your work experience isn't relevant to the job you're applying for, should you still put that?
Oh, I've heard conflicting advice on that. Do you think there is a solid answer?
Yeah, I think if it's recent, I think any work experience shows an employer that you've been able to hold a job and show up every day, and even if it's not relevant work, it's important to show a work history.
So I noticed you said the word recent. You'd feel differently if in a long list of like 10 things that you've worked at, do you think it'd be okay to leave off ones that are from a long time ago?
If you've got a long list, then you can be a little more selective. What you don't want to have is gaps of time. So you want to account for the last few years, unless you weren't working during that time.
Yeah. I think we're speaking as people who have been on hiring committees and what we're looking for. Something that was really popular in resume templates for a long time, and maybe it's not as popular anymore. It was always some sort of like objective.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? Do you still see that in resumes?
I see it a lot. Career objectives.
I used to think it was silly, but you know what? After sitting on hiring committees, sometimes those are the most impactful things on there to see what a student or a potential employee wants to do.
Yeah. How does this job fit into their future plans as a career?
Yeah, what you said there is the key part, though. It's not some generic statement that you use on maybe all of your resumes that you put out there. But it feels like it should be connecting the job you're applying for into where you want to go, right? Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, that makes sense. That you're not telling a future employer that you just want a job. You're trying to show how that fits into your career path.
Yeah.
And this particular job fits you. And sometimes objective will do that. Sometimes your objective is just to get a paycheck, but you probably don't want to highlight that.
Hopefully the getting the paycheck fits into a greater picture, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we got plenty of ideas. Let's shift gears to tags. Someone mentioned something a little bit back. Block quote. What did they say we could use a block quote for?
for any kind of narrative for any of these sections where you're going to put some text to be more descriptive about the main category. So, for example, if you're talking about software, which you have listed there, maybe you want to go into a little more detail on some of those items.
Okay, I can see the rationale behind that. I think block quote to me sounds like it would work well for the objective. Then, what I want to emphasize in the word block quote is the quote part. I think that the person who suggested that might have actually played around with block quote, and what's awesome about it is it kind of adds indentation, so it looks like it might be like an indented information underneath a heading. But I think that the true essence of a block quote hinges upon the quote part. I think that a block quote might be great for like a references area or an objective statement, something that is probably being quoted from something, or it could be said out loud. That's more of an accessibility concern. So if you find yourself playing around with tags just because of what they look like, we might revisit that when we talk about styling to maybe use different tags for that. So if you wanted to put additional information underneath a section heading, I think there are other tags that we can use for that. Can we first talk about headings a little bit? Do you have opinions on headings, Anthony?
Well, you're definitely going to want to separate your content, and by using headings, it's going to be easier for you to organize that content in a meaningful way, and you will make sure that your document is more accessible.
Okay. So I like to think about headings as like the outline of a document, and I'm pretty sure our author says something almost exactly like that. Think about the outline of what you're trying to build. So if you imagine a resume, there's probably an outline. I know we were talking about an education section and a references or a work experience section. Those are all like pieces of the resume. What do you think is the most important thing that would start out our outline? What's the most important thing on the resume?
If I think of what you just wrote here in the slide as an outline, I would probably put name up at the top more than any of those things. That seems to be one of the more important pieces of information. Because if you think I'm great, but you don't know who I am, it's not going to do me any good.
Yeah, and does name belong below in an outline underneath education? No, it's its own thing, right? This is the resume for someone. So
I think that's pretty important.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that I think on your resume is the best candidate for an H1 tag is your name, Brandon Kish. Now maybe it's Brandon Kish's resume. I don't think you should put the word resume on your resume. So let's just say your name should go in the H1. That's the essence of the document, is the top level heading. Then we organize all the other content underneath other sections or headings. What do you think would be good second level headings?
Well, typically, I think I see education or work experience coming next.
Yeah. Do you have any advice on what to put first, education or work experience?
Some of it depends on the job, because you really want to tailor these things to whatever you're applying for. But it's hard for me because I work for an educational institution, so education is often the very first thing that people put when they're applying at the college.
Right.
But oftentimes it's work experience.
Yeah. Here's where I hope we can also agree. What order should it be?
In terms of those two?
No. Like, so if you had a bunch of education, like you had multiple degrees or you had multiple jobs, what order should that content be in?
It should be in chronological from the most recent.
Okay. Yeah, we're in agreement. Cool. All right. So we identified some top level headings. Someone in the chat room asked, what would the title be? And I think they're talking about that title tag that's, in the head section. That's what's going to appear in the tab bar. That's going to appear in the window bar. That's going to appear in search results. Like, that title is what Google shows. They show the title there first. So that's where I might actually have the title be your name, but I might also include the word resume. So I think that's a really interesting question, and I hope I'm now allowed to sound a little bit contrary to my own advice. That I would put my name in the H1 because when I print this out, I want it to have my name big, but the title of the page would probably be Brandon Kish's resume or something like that, so they know what they're looking at when Google finds it. So, good question. All right, so we've identified some top-level headings. Let's say you have multiple jobs that you want to talk about work experience-wise, so you're going to list them. Do you think it would be appropriate to have like H3s for each position? Okay, I think that makes sense.
You also have some opportunities with different headers if you were to put your GPA under your education.
Yeah.
So if we listed our degrees and then you as H3s, then you could use an H4 for your GPA or
yeah, you could.
Really thinking about it like an outline, like you've mentioned.
Let's talk.
How is all this information related to each other? How is it best presented?
Let's talk about work experience, education, and certification. Those sections again. We've given them headings, and we talked about potentially using lower level headings in here. I think there's another option here too. When you boil these down to their essence, what are these three sections? Work experience, certifications, and education. Like what are we doing with that information? We're making a
man.
I'm trying. I don't know how to lead us here without saying the word. I always say the word by accident, and this time I didn't.
Sections?
They are sections. They boil down. Let's say if I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree and an associate's degree and a high school degree, what am I doing as I'm making a what? Santa does this too, right?
It sounds to me like you're making a list.
Yeah, I'm making a list. Thank you.
All right.
Man, we got to rehearse this next time.
Yeah.
This is difficult. I'm sorry, everyone. Yeah, it's an outline. But it's a list. We're making lists. You know what? Everything on the web, you start poking around the source code of the web, you're going to see so many lists. And you've been introduced to 3 different types of lists, I think, by now. I think you could easily argue that when you put your education or your references or your work experience or your certifications together, that you could use lists. So in the chat room, if you can share what some of those list types are, or I guess Anthony and I can just riff off of these a little bit too. If you were going to list off the software that you're familiar with,
good.
Do you think it matters which one comes first, or like is this a hierarchy of the software I know best, or are these just random software titles that not really random? These are software titles I know, right? Like what type of a list do you think I should use?
Well, you probably don't need a numbered list for software because you're not necessarily saying this is the first software I know and this is the second software and this third. They're relatively equal to each other in the list. So I would probably use an unnumbered list.
Yeah, if you're not David Letterman, you don't need to steal the top 10 list, right? So you can just write an unordered list. It is a list, but it's unordered, so not numbered. I think that unordered lists are probably the most popular type of list used on the web, and it would be perfect in any of these resume sections. I had a question before, like, would you use an ordered list? That's the OL for any of these. And I honestly, for my resume, I don't think I'd ever number anything on my resume. So if I was going to use a list, it'd probably just be a simple bulleted unordered list. But there is another exciting type of list that I think would be perfect for something like references. I'm gonna share it here because we're getting long on time. It's called the definition list or the description list. It's a DL. It's structured a little bit differently than the other 2 types of lists because they include tags for DT and DD. Let me explain what these are. The DT is the term essentially. So the way a definition list works is you can make like a list of definitions. And I'm actually going to switch to Adam to do this because it'll be so much more clear. Let's make a description list or a definition list here. and I'm going to make a DT. Let's pretend these are my references. I'm going to use Anthony as a reference. Am I allowed to do that, Anthony?
Yeah, you should, and you should probably ask just like you did.
Okay, all right, cool. And if you want to use Anthony or I for references, please ask us first.
Yeah, just ask.
I'm going to just finish this out here. I'm going to put your email address. I hope that's okay to put here for the world. So I might list your email address underneath here, and then I might list, I think John Doe knows me pretty well. I've already asked him if I can use him on my list. So I'm going to say that's someone at midmish.edu. The way that the definition list works is you provide a term, and then you provide the definitions for that term. And the reason I think this works so well for a resume, if I can switch back to my salmon page, I'm making a salmon resume. Very delicious. This is a lot like what a student mentioned in the chat room regarding the block quote. The definition term is listed as like almost like a heading, but then the definition itself is indented underneath the term, which is really handy. Let me zoom that up for you. So I think that this is great for multiple aspects of a resume. Maybe this would work great for your education section. You could have a DT for every school that you attended, and then you could in the definition part of it, the DD, you could list your GPA, you could list your program, and a bunch of other information. So there's definitely a lot of options here. We're just trying to give you some ideas, some brainstorming ideas to rely on when you go to build your resume. So you could use any of these lists, any of these headings. We talked about block quote. Ironically, what we didn't talk about was what we can make links with. And I think someone wanted to
This is related to a question from earlier.
Yeah, they asked if they could use a mail to link, and I'm not sure everyone would have caught that in the chapter. So let's look at this email address. Wouldn't it be great if when you're looking at the web page on my resume, wouldn't it be great if I could click on that email address to send them an email? Yeah. How do you do that, Anthony? What can we do?
Well, we need to set up an anchor tag just like we would for any other link.
Yeah, so I'm going to use Adam to make this real easy. I'm going to pretend I haven't even written the email address yet. If I just hit A and tab, it moves me to the href attribute, and this is where I can type mail to. And notice that Adam even auto-completes. I type the word mail, and it knows I probably want to make a mail to. Whoa, wow, that autocomplete did way more than I thought. It looks like in Adam, you can actually just type the word mail to, hit tab, and it fills out everything that you need to make a clickable email link. That is so cool. So I'm going to type Freds in here again. And instead of email me, I want that to actually be your email address. So if I save that.
Of note, there's it's a common error to put a space between the mail and the to, and it will not work.
Yeah, in this case, mail to is replacing the HTTPS part of the link. So it's a protocol. There's no spaces in it. It's surprisingly just mail to. So now if I refresh the page, this is a clickable link. And if I click that link, my email would open up, which is a bad idea during a live stream. I've learned this from experience. So I'm not going to click the link. You're going to have to trust me that that would pop open my email client. The other type of link, you might actually list someone's phone number here. Anthony, I am not going to dox you today. I'm just going to make another DD underneath here to put a fake phone number. So let's say it's 123456789
That is my phone.
Oh, well, perfect. Now the whole world can contact you. So that put my phone number there. There is actually a way that you can make these clickable too. Now, if you make a telephone number clickable, you're kind of trusting that there is going to be a program on someone's computer to handle it. If you're on a mobile phone, yeah, there is a phone app on your phone, I think still, right? They still make phones that can make calls?
Yes.
And if you're on a desktop, you might have Skype installed. That's what Anthony and I are using to communicate. You can make these links clickable, and they will try to open up whatever telephony app is on their computer. So it's another type of an anchor tag. And instead of mail to or HTTPS, it's actually TEL : and then you just repeat that number. So if you wanted to make that number callable, save it, and I'm going to go back and refresh. At least I thought, oh, look at that. I made the mistake I mentioned before. I didn't put the part I wanted clickable between the tags. So let me refresh that. There we go. So then if I click that, it would open up my phone app. And in this case, it would probably interrupt our Skype call and the live stream would come to a grinding halt. So I won't click on that either. But those are some interesting links that you can create. And if you're trying to remember how to do this, I think last semester someone asked me how to do this and I had to Google it. So let me show you how to Google that. How to make telephone hyperlink is what I'm going to Google. I think Google has some surprising answers that they show up at the top. So even here, you don't have to click on any answers. It tells you that it is a URL that starts with TEL:. So that's how to add it to a Squarespace site. There's a Stack Overflow answer. If you've never used Stack Overflow, you should totally take a look at it. People will ask questions and provide so many different types of answers. This is actually my prime example of getting a share link because it'll actually take you and move you down the page to the answer that you have selected, which is really handy. And it uses that little hashtag or £sign to move you down the page. So lots of cool answers on the web if you can't remember how to make a telephone link. But that's great for resumes. It's great for restaurant sites or business websites, anything that you might be creating for a project in the future. All right, so I think that we've done a pretty good job of giving them some ideas for what to include on the resume and what tags to use. If you have any more resume questions, feel free to put them in the chat room. Is there anything else you want to talk about resumes specifically, Anthony?
No, but I think this exercise will be more meaningful if you try to make it as close to what you're used to using for resumes, grounded in reality, and it'll make for better exercise.
Yeah. And you might not be completely satisfied with the way it looks when you're done because we're just using HTML tags. We're going to revisit this assignment in a couple weeks, and we're going to add styling. We're going to make it look a lot better, I promise you. So worry just about the structure of the document, the HTML tags, and then we'll come back and make it look better in a couple weeks. And if you access the slides for this live stream, I have an example from another time I taught the class of some potential tags in use. It looks like I had an H2 for education, and in that time I then used H3 for each of my colleges. I used the paragraph tag when I was putting information about my degree. There's some good tags here that you can use as an example, but feel free to pick tags that work with the content that you have in mind for your resume.
You went to my high school?
I might have.
That's what it says.
Did we miss you?
What?
I'm surprised we missed each other.
Yeah.
In the halls.
What are the chances that you went to my high school?
Excellent. Okay. All right. So let me check my list of what we were going to talk about. I think we're doing pretty good. We're over an hour already. I wanted to talk a little bit about the photo gallery assignment. Let me see if I can pull that up. Yeah. So the goal of the photo gallery assignment is to practice both creating links and including images. So if you've done well with that hierarchy of files within folders from the textbook, you're trying to look at existing folders and look at existing images and files and link them together. This photo gallery challenge actually has you in charge of creating the folders and creating the files. And I know that some people might have images of their own that they want to use, but we didn't want that to be a stressor for this assignment. So I want to introduce you to a wonderful website called Unsplash. And the tagline says it all. Beautiful free photos gifted by the world's most generous community of photographers. They have stock imagery that you do not have to pay for, that you are allowed to use in your own projects, whether that's a poster or your photo gallery for your class project. You can search, I think they're all tagged pretty well, so you can search for images on any topic. I'm going to search for college. And these are photos that were uploaded by professional photographers that they're okay with you using. We actually use Unsplash for some of the images that we have to create for the college. So you may have seen some of these floating around on our website, or if you've driven past a billboard, you might have seen some of these. They're amazing. So you can click on any one of these images. see a bigger version, and there's a download free button. When you click it, a little pop-up reminds you that even though this is free to use and you don't have to credit the source, it would be nice to say thanks by either citing the source. So if this was for something that wasn't just being submitted to class, I think it'd definitely be worth sharing a thank you to the photographer who submitted the photograph. But for this, since you're just creating a small image gallery, that's not a requirement. What we're mostly focusing on is getting a collection of images, and the requirement is for you to have 5 images, and then you're going to download them all and assemble an HTML image gallery. How would you do that? Well, I recommend, let me actually open up my downloads folder, that the first thing that you do is create a folder for this assignment. I've talked to a few students who have been working on their homework, and to make turning in assignments a lot easier, I really do recommend that you create a folder for every project that you're working on. So I'm going to create a new folder that is called Brandon Photo Gallery. Super creative, I know. And then I'm going to drag my image that I downloaded into there. So I've got a new folder. Hopefully you can see this in the live stream. It is up to you to download the 5 images and to create the HTML files. I really do recommend that you maybe create some folders in here to practice. So I'm going to create a folder called Photos. Maybe that's where I'm going to actually keep the photo files. And what's great about Atom is it works really nicely with folders. So what I would recommend is you now open up your Brandon Photo Gallery, or your name photo gallery in Atom. If you're on a Mac, allow me to show you something that might blow your mind. You can use drag and drop to drag the whole folder of your project and drag it down to the dock onto the Atom logo. Let me do that one more time. And it opens up an interface that shows just that project. And now I'm having to delay it here because my computer is trying to keep up to us. Go, Atom, go.
You can do it.
I have to make a choice, Anthony. We either have to have really good audio of you, or my computer has to be fast.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have Atom opened up. So now I'm in this folder. Notice how I can open and close the subfolders to see that image that I downloaded. People throwing up their caps. You can select any of those folders. You can right-click and choose New File. And it's going to ask for...
You said caps. I heard cats. And I'm on delay, so I was waiting for these flying felines, and no, it's hats. That's good.
Yeah, sorry about that. All right, so then you can right-click on the folder and create a new file. I created an index.html. Because I created it as index.html, I can use the cool autocomplete powers, and then I can insert my image tag, and then if you know the folder that you're going in, mine was photos, I can then type in the name of this file, which I wish I had renamed because it is a really long, crazy file name. Splash.jpg. You can provide it a width and a height. Hopefully you can get that so it's not stretching out your image. Let me open up my file. There we go. I got a little small version of an image on my web page. Now you'd want to add all the small images. You'd want to make them links, because what I'm asking you to do is create an index file, create 5 HTML web pages, one for each image, so that when you click on one of the thumbnails on the index, you're taken to a bigger version of that photo shown on a different web page. This is essentially simulating one of the exercises that you do in Chapter 7. So hopefully you'll have something that you can compare to. This is just really good practice for you getting used to the image tag, the link tag, and finding a really cool photography source. And it looks like people in the chat room have used it before, or at least are looking at it now and already have a new screensaver. That's awesome.
And we did have one question we have to go back to.
Okay.
I'm just gonna read this because it's better. It's better. This is a question about how things will be graded when I'm just going to read it. When I submitted the assignment problems from the book, it said do this a few times And one of them said to write some links somewhere in a file, kind of let us choose where we wanted it. Is this going to be judged on a case-by-case basis? How are you making a determination on grades when there's some choices that we can make on how we do some of these things?
Yeah, I think this is probably the one chapter where there's the most choice involved. Usually it's pretty cut and dry what they tell you to do. Um, I know that if I go back to that diagram, it is completely possible for you to make every single hyperlink work because they have links on every one of these pages that you could possibly insert. We don't need you to do all of them. The main goal is to practice. And so what Anthony and I are going to be looking for are examples of linking to things that are in a nested folder or linking out of a folder up higher. So as long as you demonstrate your comfort level with at least one of those, at least one of each of those, then you will be okay. We want you all to do your own work. I would rather that you focus on practicing new concepts than applying the same one over and over, especially when you consider that the textbook exercises are really just one part of what you're doing. You're being introduced to tags through those textbook exercises. You're going to be reapplying what you've done in the different challenges that we post in the week. So that's my view on it. How does that sound? Does that sound fair, Anthony?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope that answers the question.
I think we've caught up on the questions.
Okay, well, I'm checking over my list here. I think we talked about everything that I wanted to. Are there any other questions tonight, guys, in the chat room?
Not yet.
Are you looking forward to looking at resumes, Anthony?
Oh, I can't wait to see the resumes. Brandon had mentioned the later assignment. Contrasting these two is really cool.
Yeah.
Pre-CSS and post-CSS.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that's everything, Anthony. You ready to go home?
Yeah, I'm ready.
To end the live stream, we get to let's make our wagers. Do you think mid will be closed tomorrow?
Oh, man, because it can be recorded. Some people see it and they're gonna already know. I just based on that we haven't closed so far. I'm really hopeful that everybody will be safe tomorrow when they go to mid.
I'm with you. One thing I can say for sure, our online class will not be canceled. So
Not.
whether we have class on campus or not, you can stay warm, practice some HTML linking and image tags. So,
check your text messages before you start driving to school.
Yeah, definitely.
Just in case.
And there's a class cancellations page on the website. Even if the campus does not close officially, there may be instructors who cancel their classes due to transportation challenges. So be aware of that. You can get to those on midmich.edu and click on the current students link, and you'll be good. So, all right. Stay safe, Anthony. Stay warm.
Snow. There's snow right there. All right.
All right. Night, man.
All right. See ya.